Alright, I'm going to do two examples from the homework. I'm going to do the expand array method and the rotate by n method. So I'll start by actually making the test arrays that I'm going to use to test my methods first. So I'll have one that's got a couple of ones in it. I'll make one that's got some increasing numbers. I'll make one that's just the number 6. And I'll make one that's like, I don't know, 8 and 2. Alright, so let's create our methods. So expand array is a method that takes an array as input and gives an array as output. I haven't made it yet, so I'll have Eclipse create it for me. There we go. So it is a static method. It's returning an int array. It takes an int array as input, except I'm going to call this R because I like that as a better input name. Let's remember what this problem is about first. So if I have an input array that's something like this, 1, 2, 3, the output array is going to contain each of these values, but repeated the number of times that the value is equal to. So for example, 1 is only repeated once in the output, but 2 would be repeated twice, and then 3 would be repeated 3 times. So if that's what the input array would look like, that's what the output array would look like. So let's pretend that I don't have a very good way of thinking about this, and I want to try and make one. I'm just going to start jotting down some ideas in pseudocode. So I know I need to create the output array that will hold my answers. Because I went through an example by hand, I know I'll need to loop over all the elements of the input array. And then one at a time, I'll copy all the values, I'll copy each value the right number of times into the output array. And then at the end, I need to return the output. All right, so let's try and start converting this into actual Java. So I'll create the output array. I know it's an int array. I'll call it result. And right away, I have a problem, which is I need to figure out how large an array should it be. So if you think about the example that we did by hand, if every number in the input array is repeated that many times, all I have to do is figure out what is the sum of all the numbers in the input, and that should be however many elements I need for the output array. Because if 3 is going to be repeated 3 times, and 2 is repeated 2 times, and 1 is repeated 1 time, altogether I have 1 plus 2 plus 3 array elements. So that'll be my first subtask. You could try and figure out what that's going to be in here, but I think let's just pretend we have a method that does this, okay? So sum equals sum array R. And we haven't made this method yet, but we could. So we'll just consider that problem solved. And we'll come back at the end and make it. So far we're summing all the elements in the input array. We'll use that as the size for our results array. So let's loop over all the elements in the input and see what we can do. I'm going to use that new type of for loop that I mentioned in class. It's the for each loop. So I'll say integer value, and then R is the input array that I'm looping over. So now what I need to do is I need to copy each value the right number of times into the output array. So right away I'm thinking, okay, depending on what this value is, I'm going to need to loop a certain number of times because that's how many times I need to copy it. So let's make a loop. I equals 0, I less than val, I plus plus. Because if this value is 3, I know I need to add 3 of those numbers to the output array. If it's 5, I know I need to add that number 5 times to the output array. So whatever that number is, that's what I'm using here as my loop counter limit, so I'll loop exactly that many times. Alright, so I need to do something like this. I need to say, like, result array, and then I need to assign to some element, and I'm going to assign value. And like I said, that's going to happen exactly the right number of times because it's inside this loop. But I'm not sure exactly what I should use for my index reference here. So, I don't know, let's just keep thinking, and we'll come back to that as well. So I'm looping over all the elements. For each element, I loop as many times as the value of that element, and I'm copying them all in, so I guess by the time I'm done with this, it should all be done, and I can just return the output. So I'll say return result. So really, I just have two things I need to figure out. I need to make the sum array method, and I need to figure out what's happening here. There we go. And I need to figure out what's this index here. Well, a very easy way to do the index would be, let's just create a variable called nextFree, and it will point to the next open index inside the results array. So before I've started anything at all, I know that index 0 is free because I haven't put any numbers in. So I can say nextFree, and every single time I put an element in, I want to increase nextFree by 1 to point to the next open spot in my array. So that's definitely going to work because every time I assign a value, we're going to point our pointer to the next open spot. All right, last step, let's do sum array. So I'm going to let Eclipse make this method for me. And all it's supposed to do is take this input array and return the sum. So that should be easy enough. I'll make sum 0. I'll say for integer val. So I'm looping through all the elements in array, and I'm going to say sum plus equals val. So if you forget, this is the same thing as sum equals sum plus the value. And then at the end, I'll return sum. Great. So let's see if it's worked. So I've got all of these test cases up here. Let's system.out.println arrays.toString result. And remember, if I just tried to print result, it would actually display the memory location where result is stored. Arrays.toString is a built-in method that will convert an array into a string for you so that it will look nice when you display it. Alright, so you should imagine in your own head what each of these should look like when you run it. So this one, the output should just be exactly the same as the input, and when I run it, it is. So let's run test 2. So here I've got 1, and then 2 2s, and 3 3s, and 4 4s, so that looks like it makes sense. Test case 3. I've got a bunch of 6s, 6 of them, good. Test case 4. And that also looks like it's worked. Okay, great. So maybe I'll record a second video for the next one. I should say, I've said it in class, and I'll say it again here. If you were a professional programmer, you would do something called write a unit test. A unit test is an automated way of doing this kind of testing. It's a script where you tell it some inputs and you tell it what the output should be, and it will run it for you, and it'll tell you if it failed any of the test cases. But since I haven't shown you that yet, we're just doing it this way for now. Okay, check in with the next one.